Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel The War Diary. Please subscribe and like my videos. Last night, reports emerged that roughly 370 drones from Ukraine targeted Moscow, marking a bold escalation in drone warfare operations. Today, we're taking an in-depth look at what this means, how it changed the situation, and the broader implications for both sides of the conflict. Starting with the exterior context, the skies around Moscow and the wider Russian border regions have become increasingly crowded with unmanned aerial vehicles. The very notion that hundreds of drones could launch, attempt to reach the heart of Russia's capital, and force the Russian air defense apparatus to react signals a change in tone. From a wide-angle view, it shows that what was once considered deep strike territory is no longer safe for Russia. It reflects a shift from conventional missile bombardments to large-scale drone swarms. In this case, the drones reportedly targeted Moscow and surrounding regions, putting pressure on Russian air defenses and forcing airport closures and emergency responses. From the outside, you see the strategic geography: drones crossing from Ukrainian territory, penetrating layered radar and anti-air systems far from the front lines and reaching high-value zones. It demonstrates Ukraine's willingness and capability to push into what Russian authorities consider secure airspace. The spectacle of a drone swarm approaching or entering the Moscow region has both tactical and psychological weight. It also emphasizes that exterior indicators like damaged infrastructure, firefighting crews in suburbs, airport suspensions, public alarms all contribute to the broader impression of conflict escalation. For instance, one source noted that airports in Moscow had to suspend operations due to drone threats. So from the exterior vantage point, the story is Ukraine demonstrating reach, Russia reacting defensively, the capital's airspace being contested. Now let's dive interior, the heart of what this operation means and how it works internally, militarily, organizationally, psychologically. Inside the Ukrainian drone campaign, there is a layering of capabilities, innovation, and adaptation that has grown considerably since 2022. Earlier in the war, drone attacks were more localized, shorter range, comparatively low tempo. But as one analysis pointed out, Ukraine's drone strikes are a window into the future of warfare because they increasingly use small, relatively low-cost platforms to achieve asymmetric effects. What this means internally is that the Ukrainian military and supporting civilian/industrial complex has learned how to integrate drone production, mission planning, launch logistics, command and control under combat conditions, jamming environments, and deep penetration scenarios. They have improved autonomy, reduced reliance on long data links or human pilots, and exploited the fact that Russia must now defend many lines of approach rather than just a front line. The fact that roughly 370 drones were reportedly launched toward Moscow indicates a high-volume logistics and coordination challenge, staging multiple UAV, launching them from possibly dispersed sites, timing their flights, dealing with Russian air defense counter measures, radar, jamming, fighter or missile interceptors. Internally, this also means a psychological interior game, Ukraine sending a message not just to Russian forces, but to Russian society that the war is no longer distant. The capital's safety is contested. The interior of Russia's safe zone is being penetrated. That changes morale, threat perception, civilian readiness, and military posture. For the Russian side, internally it triggers faster decision-making, reallocations of air defense assets, possible panic in less defended sectors, and indirect strain on logistics as they must assume drones might come from many vectors. Another interior dimension is cost-effectiveness. Drone strikes, especially swarming ones, allow Ukraine to tie up Russian resources, air defense missiles, interceptors, force repeated alerts, and degrade morale, all at a lower cost per strike compared to large missile systems. This interior economic contrast is important, especially as the war drags on and attritional costs accumulate. Furthermore, internally within the Ukrainian command, these kinds of operations suggest a degree of confidence, willingness to strike deep to risk detection, to accept the cost of losses if the strategic payoff terror, distraction, disruption is high. It also means the industrial base must keep up with attrition of drones, training of operators, and mission planning. The Russian interior side must adapt radar coverage, early warning networks, layered intercept, civil air defense coordination. The fact that Russian sources report dozens of drones intercepted over the Moscow region and adjoining oblasts shows the strain is real. In summary, the interior of this operation is multi-layered. Technical drone build, launch, navigation, operational planning, coordination, multi-axis attack, psychological message to Russian leadership and population, economic cost curves, attrition, and organizational industrial base. Training, etc. It marks a maturation of Ukrainian drone warfare strategy, and for Russia it marks a more contested, insecure interior airspace than before. Turning now to performance. How well did this operation achieve its objectives? What were the successes and limitations? Reports state that Russian air defense units intercepted a large number of drones. For example, one report said up to 100 Ukrainian drones were destroyed overnight. This indicates that while the operation was large in scale, its full penetration success may have been limited. However, performance is not just about hits, it's also about forcing reactions, tying up resources, causing disruption. From that viewpoint, the performance is significant. Airports temporarily closed, fire crews mobilized, air defense assets diverted, civilian alarm raised. That means the performance met the broader goal of disruption, even if physical damage was limited. On the other hand, limitations remain: high attrition rates, the risk of detection, dependence on favorable weather and launch conditions, and vulnerability to improved Russian defense. Performance in future operations may degrade unless techniques improve or surprise remains high. Also, performance in terms of strategic impact changing the overall trajectory of the war is still unclear. The operation sends a message, it may not yet produce decisive battlefield shift. Nonetheless, for drone campaign metrics, the volume 370 drones is very high compared to earlier waves. The target Moscow region is high value. The reaction airport closures alarm indicates effect. So performance should be judged as strong for the campaign phase of demonstration and disruption, but moderate for strategic decisive effect. Next, safety features. This is a bit unconventional because drone warfare doesn't have safety features in the commercial sense, but we can interpret this as what defensive/safety mechanisms existed on both sides, how risk was mitigated, and how civilians and infrastructure were protected or not. From the Ukrainian side, safety mechanisms include dispersal of launch sites, use of redundant guidance or autonomous navigation to reduce reliance on vulnerable linkages. From the Russian side, safety features include layered radar and air defense systems, electronic warfare/jamming to disrupt drones, civil alert systems, airport closures, and evacuation protocols. For example, Russian aviation watchdog reported airports briefly closed for safety reasons. On the ground, safety of civilians is a concern. One report noted 5 people injured, including a child, when a drone reportedly struck an apartment block in a suburb of Moscow. That shows the imperfect nature of civilian safety inside conflict zones. On the flip side, from the Ukrainian side, safety in launching is improved when using smaller, harder-to-detect platforms, night launches, multiple vectors making retrieval of pilots unnecessary and reducing human casualty risk for Ukraine. So safety becomes risk mitigation for operators and civilians. In sum, safety features in this context mean both offensive side mitigation, reducing risk to operators and platforms, and defensive side protective features, air defense, early warning, civil protections. The operation tested many of these safety layers, and the fact that no major wide-scale civilian death toll was immediately reported may suggest the safety layers held reasonably well, though each incident raises concerns. Now we move to unique selling points of this kind of operation. What sets this drone wave apart from prior actions and what makes it strategically noteworthy? First, USP, scale and depth. Launching hundreds of drones aimed at the capital region demonstrates considerable reach and scale beyond simply border skirmishes. Second, symbolic value. The capital region being targeted means the war is no longer on the periphery. This has both propaganda and morale implications. Third, cost effectiveness. Drones are cheaper than missiles, quicker to build and launch, and harder to trace back or deter in large swarms. Fourth, adaptability and innovation. The Ukrainian development of drone tactics, use of multi-axis approaches, electronic warfare countermeasures, and integration into broader strategy shows a maturation. Fifth, forcing the adversary to divert resources. For Russia, defending multiple vectors over long distances means higher cost, more complexity, and potential exhaustion. Sixth, psychological pressure. Not just hitting targets, but making the opponent feel vulnerable. These USP combine to make such operations more than simply tactical. They are strategic signaling mechanisms as well. Therefore, the unique selling points of the operation are about being persistent, not one-off, deep capital region, scalable hundreds of drones, cost-efficient, and psychologically impactful. Regarding price in conventional terms, we might talk about cost in lives, resources, equipment, and opportunity. While specific dollar figures for this particular 370 drone wave haven't been disclosed publicly, we can generalize. Drones cost far less than ballistic missiles or manned aircraft. The Ukrainian drone campaign is said to be relatively inexpensive in comparison to traditional heavy strike systems. For example, past analysis notes that small drones used by Ukraine allow significant effect for low cost. From the Russian perspective, the cost is in intercepting them air interceptors, missiles, radar time, readiness, and the disruption cost airport closures, civilian alarm, increased air defense posture. So the price to Ukraine may be high in terms of logistics, training, attrition of drones, but relatively low compared to other strike options. The price to Russia is higher than just the intercepted drones, defensive resources diverted, infrastructure under threat, needing to upgrade systems. For civilians and infrastructure in Russia, the price potentially includes downtime, damage, insurance, fear. So while not a financial figure in USD easily, the cost/benefit ratio for Ukraine appears favorable. For Russia, the cost of doing nothing becomes greater with each wave. Finally, in the conclusion, this Operation 370 Ukrainian drones targeting Moscow represents a watershed moment in the evolution of the war. It isn't just about the number of drones but what it signals, that the front is more fluid, the deep interior is contested, and drone warfare has matured into a strategic tool rather than just a tactical novelty. For Ukraine, it underscores a shift from defending homeland to projecting power deep into adversary territory, leveraging innovation, asymmetry, and volume. For Russia, it means recalibrating defense posture, accepting that no region is completely safe, investing in layered air defense, and grappling with the psychological side of being targeted at home. While the physical damage may still be limited in some cases, the operational, strategic, and symbolic impact is large. The price for Ukraine is manageable. The cost for Russia is increasing. As the war continues, technology, volume, and surprise will likely define future operations rather than sheer size of traditional weapon systems. This event may therefore mark a turning point in how the conflict is fought and how both sides allocate resources. Ultimately, whether this leads to a decisive shift remains to be seen, but its significance is considerable. It's a clear message. The war is no longer only about frontline trenches. It is also about skies, airspace, infrastructure, innovation. And in that domain, drones are now center stage. Thank you for watching. If you found this breakdown useful, please like and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for our next update on the War Diary.